Definition of volume: the amount of cubic units that a solid can hold. So where area uses cubic square units, volume uses cubic units. So this lesson is going to be about volume, and we're going to start off with volume of prisms. Volume of prisms. The volume of a prism is the product of the base area and the height of the prism. The height of the prism is the distance between the bases. Now with a rectangular prism, you can pick any side you want to be the base. Prisms, the sides have to be rectangles, but in a rectangular prism, all of the sides are rectangles. So it doesn't matter which one you choose as base. But then height is going to be determined by what the base is. So the height, therefore, is going to be the distance between whatever side you determine is going to be the base and the opposite base. All right, so for instance here on the one on the left, if the bottom is the base, the top is the opposite base, and the height is the distance between those two bases. Okay? All right, so the area of the base, I like to call it little b and little h. All right, little b and little h, it's the base length times the height of the base. So for instance, here on this one on the left, it is labeled with L and W. So therefore, the area of the base would be the length times the width. Right? Sometimes it's called base and height. Length and width doesn't make that much of a difference. It's referring to the same thing. Right? It's the two different measurements. Right? And they're consecutive measurements, not opposite measurements. And then for the volume, you take that area of the base and multiply it times the height. So we'll calculate out for each of these the area of the base, the height of the prism, and then the volume. All right, so let's take a look at the prism on the right-hand side. All right, like I said, I like to make for the rectangular prism the bottom be the base. This is as good as any other, right? So I think let's use it. It's easier for me to color in the top. When I tried to make it look three-dimensional on the bottom, I don't know. I think it looked a little off. Right? But whatever the bottom side is, the top side is the same. So this is 4 centimeters and this is 6 centimeters. Therefore, the area of the base would be 4 centimeters times 6 centimeters, or 24 centimeters squared. The height of the prism is the distance between these two bases, right, the top and the bottom. So the height is 5 centimeters. That makes the volume equal to 24 times 5, or 120 centimeters cubed. Right? So area is measured in square units. Volume is measured in cubic units. Here's the next one. Now, the top one is not a rectangular prism. This is a triangular prism. How do we know it's a triangular prism? It has two sides that are triangles. And so if all the sides are not rectangles, whatever's not a rectangle must be the base. And of course, this is a prism because it has sides that are rectangles. All right, so right here we're given the height of the base there. All right, and this is little h, not big H. Right, so height also is. So when we're finding area of the base, height is the same. Little h height is the same as altitude. If we're referring to the height of the prism, that would be the distance between the bases, and I'll try to use capital H for that, right? So that you can remember that that's the height of the prism. And we don't usually refer to the height of a prism as being altitude. All right, so now to find the area of a triangle, you take half the base times the height. Right? The triangle has half the area, as a rectangle does. So instead of just base times height, it's half the base times the height. Here, and base and height, when we're calculating out area of a triangle, are going to be perpendicular to one another. And here we're given, so to find the area of the base, we take 1/2 times 9 times 15 right? And we could just leave that in terms of a fraction. Or because this is a terminating decimal, you can make it a decimal. Either is okay. Right? So as a fraction, this would be 135 halves. And that is inches squared. All right, so now the height, big H, the height of the prism is the distance between the bases. It's the distance between the two triangles. So the height of the prism is 12 inches. And so therefore the volume of the prism is 135 halves times 12. Right? And so that's going to be, and you could reduce this. We could cancel out, right, the 2 and the 12. We could reduce that. They're both divisible by 2. And so that gives us 135 times 6. And that is 810 inches cubed. Right, so the next one is just a rectangular prism. They even shaded the bottom. That would be a good one to make the base, because it doesn't matter, right, what the base is, but if I choose the bottom to be the base, then the height has to be the distance between the bottom and the top, right? And so that would be, actually maybe I should put it over here, since the 12 is over here. So this would be big H, the height of the prism, right? So little b and little h, the dimensions used to figure out the area of the base are going to be the 8 inches and the 3 inches. So the area of the base is just 8 times 3, or 24 inches squared. The height of the prism is the distance between the top and the bottom. Right? There would be the other base. Right? And so that's 12 inches. So the volume is going to be the area of the base, which is 24, times the height of the prism. And so that's going to be 288, and this is inches, inches cubed. And there we go. Just a little bit. All right, let's try another one. All right, so now here we have another triangular prism. And on prisms, all the opposite bases, right, and the opposite side measures, they're all parallel to one another, and they're all the same length. So whatever, these two are parallel and would be the same length. And these two are parallel and would be the same length, right? And these two are parallel and are the same length, right? So we have the 12 as one side of this. This is a right triangle. We can see the right angle there, right? And so if this side over here is 15, this one over here is 15 as well. But we're missing one side of the triangle, and it's the side that we need to calculate out the area. When we're calculating out area, the base has to be perpendicular to the height, right? So 12 here will be the base, x will be the height, and that's because the 12 is perpendicular to that side that says x, all right? So put an arrow here, it's not really equals, right? So whenever we're finding the area, your measurements must be perpendicular. They must meet at right angles. If we use the 15, that's wrong, all right? Because the 15 is a side measure, but it's not the base and the height, right? The base and the height are perpendicular. So let's find that missing little h, the little height of the triangle, right? And we can use Pythagorean theorem. Right? So use Pythagorean theorem to find x, which is the height of the triangle. And that's because this is a right triangle. All right, so that would be, remember, it's leg squared plus, and actually I'll write that in just to make sure. So it's leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. The hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle, right? So the 15 is the hypotenuse. So this is x squared plus 12 squared equals 15 squared. That's x squared plus 144 equals 225. Subtract 144 from both sides, and x squared equals 81. If we take the square root of both sides, and we only want the positive, right? There is a positive and a negative number that when it's squared will equal 81, but this is a length, and so we only want the positive. So x is going to be 9, right? So positive only. All right, so now that we have the height of the triangle, we can find the area of the base. It's a triangle, right? So it's going to be 1/2 times 12 times 9. So the area of the base, half of 12 is 6. 6 times 9, that would be 54, and I don't know what the units are because they're not shown, so we'll just call it units squared. The volume is big B, area of the base, times big H, which is height of the prism. And I'm just going to make sure that that's clear for everybody. So when we're talking the big B here, we're talking about the area of the base, and big H is the height of the prism, not a side measure in the base. It's not used to calculate area, it's just used to calculate volume. And so right here is the height of the prism, right? It is the distance between the two bases. The two bases of this triangular prism are the only two sides that are triangles, right? And so the distance between them is 20. So that means the volume is going to be the area of the base, which is 54, times the height of the prism, right? So that's going to be 1,080 units cubed. All right, and this is another one done. All right, so let's try another one. And if you have any questions, let me know. We're only going to be looking here at rectangular prisms. Oh, we ended it. And triangular prisms. All right, and that was the end of prisms. You know what? Let's just put cylinders with prisms because cylinders and prisms in a lot of ways are very similar. All right, so cylinders have two bases, like a prism. Right, so two bases, and so do go back and put it over here. And I think this is the first page. Yeah, close in. I want this page. All right, so just like cylinders, prisms also have two bases. The height of the prism is the distance between the bases. As we have up there. Right, and the volume is the area of the base times the height of the prism. Right, so just like prisms, cylinders are very similar in that their volume is going to be the area of the base times the height, not of the prism. This isn't a prism, but this would be the height of the cylinder. And I'm hoping that my battery power will continue. All right, so finding the volume of the cylinder, just like the prism, we're going to take the area of a base times the height, and let's use big H, right, because that's height of the prism, right? So it's the area of the base. So volume equals area of the base. and then times the height of the cylinder. Right? But since the base of a cylinder is a circle, let's write that in there, base is a circle, we're going to use the formula for area of a circle, which is pi r squared. So area of a circle equals pi r squared, right? And that gives us the formula for volume of a cylinder, pi r squared times h, the height, and the height is the, I'll put it in here, height is the distance between the circle bases. Right, so we have two here. This one, I don't know if you can see it really well, but for me it's kind of like drifting off the board. And this one happens to be an oblique cone. We have, oblique cylinder. I can't seem to move that. We have what's called right prisms and cylinders and pyramids and cones, and we have oblique. And oblique just means that the two bases are not directly over one another. They're still parallel, but they're not directly over one another. So you can see here is one base and the other base is over here. So it's like it's leaning, right? But the nice thing is it doesn't matter whether the figure is a right prism cylinder or oblique, the volume is calculated out the same way. The area of the base times the height of the prism, but the height is the direct distance, right? So height always has to be perpendicular. We can't use any slanty sides, right? So height is just that straight distance from the one base to the other. And if it happens to be a right cylinder like this one, right, it's actually part of the cylinder. And if it's an oblique cylinder, well, then it's just that distance. All right, so now let's find the volume of the right cylinder above. All right, so we're given the radius. The radius is 3. The height of the cylinder, and we're not given units, but that's all right. The height of the cylinder is right here. Right, so it's that 6. Right, and I'll just put the right angle there. Right, so the height, the side does meet the base at a right angle. Right, so to calculate out the volume of the cylinder, the volume is just pi times the radius squared times the height. We'll square first, so that's pi times 9 times 6. So the volume of the cylinder is 54 pi units cubed. We are going to always leave your answer in terms of pi. We want the exact answer. We only ever change out of pi if we're trying to calculate out the radius. We're given the volume and we want to find the radius or the height, and we don't want to have pi in our answer. Right, so then we'll approximate, but otherwise we want the exact answer. So leave your answer in terms of pi. All right, so now let's find the volume of the oblique cylinder. We're given the diameter, right? So the diameter goes from one side through the center. I can't seem to outline it, but one side through the center right to the other side. All right. So if we want to find the volume, we're going to have to find the radius because we can't use diameter. Well, the radius is just half the diameter. All right, so that means radius is half of 10, which is 5 meters. So the volume, we have pi times the radius, which is 5, squared. And then right here is the height of the prism, 14. All right, so we'll square, so that's pi times 25 times 14. Right, and so that would be 350 pi meters. Right, because 10 would be 250, and then plus 4 times 25 is 100. Yep, 355 pi meters. And don't forget, that's cubed. All right, so now we have a word problem, and I think that's going to be the last one on this video, because then we'll be going on to pyramids, which I'm going to do on the next video. So when solving word problems involving cylinders, make sure you identify the given radius and height. Find the volume of a can that has a diameter of 5 inches. Right, so if the diameter equals 5 inches, we want the radius, and we know the radius is half the diameter. So that means it's 5 halves or 2.5 inches, whichever one you like, since both of those are exact answers. And a height of 9 inches. So the distance between the bases is 9 inches, and we want to find the volume. All right, we've got the formula for volume on the side there. So the volume of this cylinder will be pi times, I'm going to take the 5 halves. All right. Either one is fine. All right, so times 5 halves squared times 9. All right, and when we square a fraction, we just square the numerator and square the denominator. So 5 squared would be 25. 2 squared would be 4. If you squared the 2.5, that would be 6.25. That's because 25 squared is 625. So 2.5 squared is 6.25. I'm going to leave it, though, like that. And then we'll just simplify. All right. So I have 25 fourths times 9. Doesn't really simplify. And I think maybe I'll reduce it to a decimal now. And that would be, oops, I accidentally divided. I hit the wrong key. So 25 divided by 4 times 9 and 56.25 pi. And this was in inches, so inches cubed. And there we go. All right, so we've looked at prisms and we've looked at cylinders, and in the next video we'll look at pyramids and cones and spheres. All right, so thanks for watching. Bye for now.